Okay, let's talk more about the research that you should be doing before you write a TV pilot. Shannon E. Johnson here, CEO of The Professional Pen, where we develop screenwriters from I did a pitch. Need help on your screenplay? Go to www.theprofessionalpen.com. Okay, so yesterday we talked a little bit about audience as we kind of dissected the young man's story of selling a script, a treatment, a pitch deck, we don't know what level it was, to BET, and then being frustrated with the development process when he was told that his storylines were too complex. So what we learned is BET has a particular audience and BET understands their audience, right? With that being said, you should be paying attention to what your audience is for your work and the best production company, studio, streamer, network for your audience and therefore your content. So let's talk a little bit more about audience. We kind of had this same conversation around Good Times, right? There is a specific audience out there for Good Times. However, Good Times was marketed to Black people. And Black people are not a monolith, right? You have to be able to niche down to your audience, not just based on their ethnicity or their gender, not even just based on their socioeconomic status, but also their habits and how they watch television. So for example, when I was interviewing to be an executive at the Sci-Fi Channel, I was interviewing around NBC Universal because the Sci-Fi Channel is owned by NBC Universal. And in every single interview, they were asking me what I was watching. Now, it just so happened I was watching NBC shows at the time. I was watching Heroes and I was watching Friday Night Lights. So I happened to have very specific answers about what I was watching and what I felt was working and wasn't working. Now, had they caught me 3 or 4 years before then, I not only would not have had any specific answers, I would not have had too many answers about anything current that I was watching. And here is why. I was a college student 3-4 years before then. And as a college student, I wasn't in the house during prime time television. And prime time television is where you find your original series. The current new series are coming on sometime between 7 o'clock and 10 o'clock outside of streamers. Yes, during college, I would only really be in my dorm room after 10 o'clock. So what was I watching? Shows that were in syndication. I was watching Martin, I was watching Friends, I was watching Seinfeld, I was watching Cheers. Literally getting a bowl of cereal and watching shows in syndication as I went to sleep. So if people were considering me as their audience, oh, well, she's Black, oh, she's a woman, she'll probably really like Girlfriends. I didn't watch Girlfriends during the time that it was out because I wasn't at home at 7 or 8 o'clock at night to watch it. Right? So that was actually one of my answers to them. I said, Friday Night Lights is the best thing that ever happened to television, but it seems like you don't want it to be successful. And they said, why? I said, because it comes on Friday night at 7. Do you know where all of the people who would watch Friday Night Lights are? At their own football games on a Friday night. Right? So I want you to consider habits. That is the reason that the BET executive said to the young man that the storylines were a little too complex because their particular audience is probably multitasking while they're watching the show, right? The other thing that you need to consider is time slot. Time slot. If you'll notice, the ratings for the show that you're watching, the TV rating for the show that you're watching becomes more mature from the 7 o'clock to the 10 o'clock hour. For example, most of your family shows are coming on at 7 o'clock. Now, this depends on what time zone you're in, but whatever that first grouping of original series is, whatever that is for you. For some places that might be 6 o'clock, some places that might be 7 o'clock, some places that might be 8 o'clock. But you know what I mean, right? That first group of stuff that's coming on any of our big 5 channels is going to be something family oriented. That means your children can watch it too. Once we get to 8 o'clock, the assumption is that your children are going to bed. And now things can become more mature. Now, I was on tour during the time of TGIT. I can't tell you what came on at 7 o'clock. I haven't the slightest idea. I didn't watch it. But what I know happened at 8 o'clock was Grey's Anatomy. And in Grey's Anatomy, we're going to get some sex scenes. So guess what? Your kids should be asleep. And by 9 o'clock, I'm going to get Scandal, and it's going to get real scandalous. And by 10, I'm going to get How to Get Away with Murder, which means people are dying. People die in Grey's Anatomy, but they die in a different kind of way, right? The audiences are different from 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock, right? Even when you think about network to network, I could probably go to NBC as a child and get family stuff like The Cosby Show, A Different World, A Fresh Prince. When I got a little bit older and I wanted things to get a little spicy, I went over to Fox because now I can watch Martin and Living Single, right? Audience. Also, time slot. Pay attention to those time slots. So this is the thing that you should be thinking about when you are pitching, especially to the smaller networks that do not do as much programming as the larger networks. Larger networks buy a whole bunch of pilots during pilot season. They're going to test a whole bunch of them, and a few of them are going to make it. For our smaller networks that don't have that much programming time in the first place, they're probably replacing the thing that got canceled, which means it's probably going to be replaced at that same time slot, which means if your content doesn't meet that time slot's audience, either they're not going to buy it or they're going to change it so that it does. They are trying to fill a need. Okay? So I want you to think about that when you are writing. And, a lot of writers are out here thinking, well, my job is just to write. And your job is so much more than that. And that's one of the reasons why I'm always telling new writers, don't be so concerned about being the showrunner. You can't be a showrunner yet because you think your job is only to write. Right? You don't even realize that your job is going to be more business and more management and more liaising between the studios, the networks, marketing, advertising, brands, all kinds of things. And then there's writing, right? So while you're in this position right now, while you're trying to figure it out, think about that. Now, if you want more detail about if you want more detail about what you should be considering before you write your pilot, I have a workbook that comes with a buddy. And what that means is there is a workshop that I've done that I've kind of edited down so that you can follow along as I'm talking you through the workbook. So you can either buy the workbook by itself or you can get the workbook and the buddy. If you want that, look in the caption. I'm going to give you the instructions so that I can drop it to you. It's not going to cost you that much, and it's going to be great. Okay? Okay. Happy writing. I'm silly. Bye.
The professional pen. The